When it comes to scripture, for Christians, it's the Bible. For Muslims, the Quran. In Judaism, you have the Torah. For Hindus, we have the Vedas, the Upanishads, the Mahabharata, the Bhagavad Gita, the Agamas, the Tirumantaram, the Tirukkural, the Puranas, and that's just getting started. Let's sort it all out. I'm Matt McDermott, and this is All About Hinduism, Episode 4. What are the main spiritual texts of Hinduism? The Abrahamic faiths all turn to one main sacred text for divine guidance and inspiration. Hinduism is more complex, rich in scripture, without one single book that all Hindu lineages turn to. Hinduism has a truly vast collection of ancient religious writings. These sacred texts are classified broadly into two categories, Shruti and Smriti. The word Shruti literally means heard, and consists of what Hindus believe to be eternal truths. These texts are described as revealed texts, divinely inspired in origin, and contain the foundational truths of Hinduism. That said, Hindus don't read these texts as literal, the way sometimes Abrahamic texts are. Rather, they contain fundamental truths about life and existence, often expressed in symbolic, poetic, and exalted terms. The second category of scripture is Smriti, which literally means memory, and is distinguished from Shruti in terms of origin. Teachings in Smriti texts are meant to be read and interpreted anew in light of the changing circumstances of time period, place, and personality. They remind Hindus of the eternal truths expressed in Shruti that reinforce those teachings. Sometimes when reading Smriti, you can come across passages that seem out of step with lofty ideals of oneness expressed in Shruti. You also come across passages, particularly on social issues, on class, relations between men and women, that also can seem downright regressive by today's standards. Smriti texts reflect the time period and society in which they were written. They aren't meant to be universal guidance that necessarily should be applied today. Personally, if something in Smriti, or any Hindu text really, seems to run counter to the teachings of divine oneness and respect for all beings, I ignore it. It's the divine oneness part that always takes precedence. But in terms of how the main texts fall, in terms of the Shruti and Smriti classifications, here's what to know. The Vedas and Upanishads are Shruti. The word Veda means knowledge, and there are 4 Vedas, Rig, Sama, Yajur, and Atharva. The Rig Veda is the oldest of them, going back several thousands of years in written form. The Upanishads, over 100 of them, contain extensive explorations of methods of understanding the self, the divine, and the nature of the world. Here's a glimpse of the writing style of the Rig Veda, using an English translation. Dawn, the glorious bringer of graces, shines forth and flings wide open for us her shining doors. Stirring the whole world, she displays her riches, raising to consciousness all living beings. She wakes to action all those who repose in slumber. Some rise to labor for wealth, others to worship. Those who saw little before now see more clearly. Dawn raises to consciousness all living creatures. One she leads to power, another to glory. Another she leads on to pursuit of gain. Yet others she directs to varied callings, raising to consciousness all living creatures. Vanished are those who in the days before us gazed at the rising of the morning sun. It is we, the living, who now behold the dawn, and after us, her shining others will see. Smriti texts deal with diverse topics, many of which are more worldly as compared to the Vedas and Upanishads, dealing with how to live in the world and represent the social age in which they were created. The Upavedas consist of 4 main texts, discussing Ayurveda, how to live a healthy life, techniques of warfare, guidance on public administration, government, economics, and politics, as well as aesthetics and various art forms. There are also the Puranas, The stories in the Puranas translate the meanings of the Shruti scriptures and teach them to the masses through stories and parables. There are 18 major Puranas and many more minor ones. Then we get to the epics, such as the Ramayana. This popular epic tells the life story of Prince Rama, who Hindus believe to be an incarnation of the divine. Prince Rama suffers years of exile and many hardships while destroying powerful demons before returning to rule his kingdom. There are numerous versions of the Ramayana, of which the most well-known are those by the original author Sage Valmiki and the poet saint Tulsidas. And the Mahabharata. With over 100,000 verses, the Mahabharata is a historical epic. It's the longest poem the world has ever known. Based on an extended conflict between two branches of the same family, the Mahabharata is a trove of stories and discourses on the practice of dharma, including the importance of truth, justice, self-sacrifice, and the upholding of dharma, the need for complete devotion to God, and the ultimate futility of war. Agama Shastras. Ancient and numerous, including many that have been lost over the centuries, these texts deal with practical aspects of devotion and worship, including personal and temple rituals and practices. Finally, the Bhagavad Gita. The Bhagavad Gita is a primary scripture for Hindus. Although it is a tiny part of the Mahabharata and technically classed as a Smriti text, it is traditionally accorded the rank of an Upanishad. It is meant to help one understand that upholding dharma can be challenging, especially in situations where there is not a clear right or wrong. To close out this episode, here's a taste of the Bhagavad Gita as translated into English by Eknath Easwaran. On a great battlefield, Lord Krishna, either a form of Vishnu or the highest form of divinity depending on the lineage of Hinduism to which you belong, is acting as a charioteer for Prince Arjuna. Arjuna is hesitant to begin the battle as his opponents are members of his own family. Arjuna asks Krishna, "O Krishna, you have said that knowledge is greater than action. Why then do you ask to wage this terrible war? Your advice seems inconsistent. Give me one path to follow to the supreme good." Krishna replies, "At the beginning of time, I declared two paths for the pure heart, Jnana Yoga, the contemplative path of spiritual wisdom, and Karma Yoga, the active path of selfless service. One who shirks action does not attain freedom. No one can gain perfection by abstaining from work. Indeed, there is no one who rests even for an instant. All creatures are driven to action by their own nature. Those who abstain from action while allowing the mind to dwell on sensual pleasure cannot be called spiritual aspirants, but they excel who control their senses through the mind, using them for selfless service. Fulfill all your duties. Action is better than inaction. Even to maintain your body, Arjuna, you are obliged to act. Selfish action imprisons the world. Act selflessly, without any thought of personal profit. What the outstanding person does, others will try to do. The standards such people create will be followed by the whole world. The ignorant work for their own profit, Arjuna. The wise work for the welfare of the world, without thought for themselves. By abstaining from work, you will confuse the ignorant who are engrossed in their actions. Perform all work carefully, guided by compassion. It is better to strive in one's own dharma than to succeed in the dharma of another. Nothing is ever lost in following one's own dharma, but competition in another's dharma breeds fear and insecurity. Next time on All About Hinduism, we'll get to the bottom of one of the most frequently asked questions about Hinduism. Are all Hindus vegetarian? Hope you'll join us. You've made it to the end of this episode of All About Hinduism. The show is produced, written, and edited by me, Matt McDermott. All About Hinduism's academic advisor is Dr. Shireen Bala. Shyam Allard is the associate producer. Suhag Shukla reviews each script, making all sorts of helpful notes and suggestions. Before you go, leave us a nice 5-star review on whatever platform you're listening to this on. Please also subscribe or follow us so you can get all of the new episodes the moment they're released. Also, you can help ensure that more of these get made by making a donation to HAF at hinduamerican.org/donate. Thanks again for listening.